continue to encourage you. Mrs. Patricia Simon Hart is an example we want to follow. Patricia, I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And congratulations to Ms. Hart, Patricia Simon Hart, on your recognition as one of the Amazons of Cytec. Thank you. I think you cannot take your seats because you're my next panel. I can get whatever you want from you down there. Just take your seat. Let me get it down for you. I can get this one for you. Don't worry. I can get this one. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. All right. Let's get into the business of the panel. She's already seated, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of EveafriqueNews. You've also heard the non-independent director for Aradel Holdings, Ms. Patricia Simon Hart is on her seat. Joining her is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Stars Investment and the board member of NIMASA. Welcome, Irohama Ogwefu. Also on the panel, I'd like to welcome at this time General Manager Development and Subsurface for Renaissance Africa Energy Company Limited. Welcome Engineer Himen Agunloye. Managing Director of Lloyd's Marine Services Limited is on the panel. Welcome Basi Adie. Chief Executive Officer of Satellite Gas Station Limited is on the panel. Please welcome Tami Lola. She's on our panel. Tami Lola is joining the ladies, completing the list of panelists. Where's Basi? Oh, okay. Tell me this way. You're coming this way. Yes, thanks to Ahimen. And to drive the conversation for us is a woman who also received the award yesterday and one who is passionate about DEI and the next generation. Dr. Ibilola, our principal consultant.
How often do you see people hear their phone on your face?
Please, and those who are speaking around the foyer of the grand ballroom, kindly just reduce their voices or go to the exhibition hall. We can hear your business secret from here. We want to protect it. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Mao, the stage is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming to this last day of the Cytec event. And thank you so much to my highly esteemed panelists for being here. The topic at hand is DEI, Next Generation, Leading Africa's Oil and Gas Future, Voices, Challenges and Impact. Taking place here at this landmark 10th anniversary of Cytec, I'm highly honored to be moderating a panel of Amazons who will be talking passionately about what we must do based on their years of experience, expertise, and the value they have created in the oil and gas industry. As we heard from the minister, we're trying to scale from about 1.5. Welcome, Basi. Thank you so much for making this. Basi, welcome. We heard from the minister, we're trying to scale from 1.5 million barrels a day to about 3 million barrels a day. And there's so much to be done in various supply chains to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. The brilliant lady panelists we have here have wonderful experience, expertise, and ideas they would like to share on how we can move forward from conversation to execution, value addition, and value creation, as they prove the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in scaling and achieving the lofty goals we have as a nation in the oil and gas industry. So I'm going to pass the first question on to my panelists. I'm going to be speaking to Patricia Simon Hart, who we've heard has experience on several boards and is an Amazon of repute. And the first question I'll be asking her is, given Nigeria's growing need for skilled local capacity, how is EveafriqueNews intentionally preparing the next generation of diverse technical talent? And what gaps do you believe the industry still needs to close to make this sustainable? Over to you, Patricia.
Thanks, Viola. And thank you to Cybec again for organizing today's event for women and the youth. It's always an exciting time here on the last day of Cybec. I run a company called EveafriqueNews. We're a well services company to drilling support operations, well services. We've been around for about 27 years. We started as a technology resource company, so we introduced new technology into the industry to help operations, to optimize production for our clients. So from the very beginning, capacity development was always key, because if you're introducing technology which nobody knows about or knows how to use, you have to build the skills. And operating in a high-risk environment where safety is key, you must build the capacity and get the engineers to understand the risks associated with operating in such environments. And so from the beginning, capacity building is always part of what we do. It goes way beyond just classroom, teaching people in the classroom or bringing people into the company and also teaching them or training them in a class-based environment. It goes further than that. We need experiential training. And so for us, as we bring you in, you literally go through a program of training, really reskilling you on just oil services and what goes on the field. And then we have specific training on technology, depending on the technology, hands-on training at the base on equipment that they're going to use in the field, how they're going to maintain it, how they're going to use it, how they're going to operate it. So they have that kind of hands-on experience. And then, most importantly, is being on the actual field. No two wells act in the same way. So they need that experiential training, which is field training. And I think that's a major challenge in the sector. Because you can train a lot of people in the classroom, you can train a lot of people in your bases, you can train a lot of people on your technology, but to get them to actually physically use it in the field and to train up young engineers and entry-level engineers to get that experience, you have to have a mentorship program in place. So we always had a mentorship program, and we always run mentorship programs within our company where we attach entry-level engineers to more experienced engineers and get them to have field experience. Having those opportunities for them to go into the field is really a challenge, especially for offshore operations. It's literally impossible. So we start with, luckily when we have field jobs, we send them to the field with their mentors to get that field experience. So I think that's the most important thing when it comes to training.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I think she deserves a round of applause for pointing out the fact that we really young engineers, train them on classroom formal training, semi-formal mentoring, coaching, field experience. So I'll pass this on to Iro. Iro is a next-gen petan. Iro's dad is one of the founding members and stars of petan. So this is our first category of next-gen petan members. And she's doing such a fantastic job. We're so proud of Iro. Petan is so proud of what she's been able to do with her dad's company. So as a young leader, Iro, driving Nigeria's energy value chain, how have representation and access, particularly for women and young professionals, shaped your leadership decisions and investment priorities? She's also on the board of NASA, so please give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'll just speak a little bit about our business. So we're a marine logistics firm. So we own and operate 11 ships that provide services to oil companies. And first of all, it's a very male-dominated industry. So So most of the seafarers, I think only about 3% of globally seafarers are women. So when I joined the organization 12 years ago, I had already seen that there wasn't an intentional move by the company to provide, whether it's training time for female cadets or just intentionally recruiting female officers. So first of all, you're dealing with a mindset of, oh, we're just going based on merit. And the truth is that, yes, if you put out a call today and say, I need marine engineers, for example, maybe the first 50 that show up at my door will definitely be men. Just by virtue of where we are, not just Nigeria, but globally. Before maybe you see 1 or 2 triples of a woman applying, right? So if you're not intentional, you just go with, okay, the first 50 who have come, yes, they're men, whatever, are they competent, can they do the job, hire them, and then you go on your merry way. So maybe 2-3 years into my leadership, well, I wasn't leading because then I was working as the CEO. I had to convince my then CEO and the board that there is a need, so it's not just leaving it to chance, and I think maybe that's something I'd like to leave behind in this room. We can't leave the opportunities to chance and say peradventure the first applicant will be a woman, as opposed to the 51st applicant being a woman. We will have to say, which is what I'm doing now, that take our cadetship training program, which is actually what gives our seafarers the opportunity to become licensed and certified officers. They need to go through an 18-month period of training on board. Now, if you go to school, you come out of school, and you cannot get that sea time, you can never become an officer. So we have a lot of female students who have graduated, but they have not been able to get sea time opportunities on board, so they're not able to then become female officers and then be employed. So for our cadetship training program, there must be 4 slots that are given to women out of 14. Very intentional. I don't care, find them, you have to give it to women, find them, put out the call, you delay, if you get your 10 men first, fantastic. But you see those 4 slots, they don't go to anybody other than female cadets, so that way we're contributing our own quota. Now, have there been disappointments along the way? Yes, and I wrote also like that. So yes, you put out, you put yourself out on the line, and then you give those slots away. Maybe halfway through the program, the female cadet drops off, maybe one family issue and everything. But because I understand the context, even though it's a disappointment, it's not a discouragement, right? It doesn't deter me from saying, well, we go again. We find another woman and she replaces that. So let's say we have female officers. So now we're recruiting female officers. A year ago, we had our first female chief engineer. It takes you approximately almost 11 years of your profession to attain the highest level of that your career as a marine engineer. The highest level you get to as a marine engineer is a chief engineer. And we're able to produce our first female chief engineer. And she came in as a cadet. I'm trying to show you her cycle, her journey. So we weren't encouraging her to create a safe working environment. When we talked about investments, if I wasn't intentional about her PPE, if I wasn't intentional about her living conditions on board, if I wasn't intentional about putting a strong harassment policy that cascades from the board level all the way to the gate man, everybody's held accountable, then she would have thrived in my system. Now we're about to create and to produce our first chief officer, which is the second highest rank on board the ship. She's going to back to school to sit her exams, and then hopefully she's produced, and she came in as a cadet. So I think for me as a young leader, as you said, maybe coming in, being more open-minded in my thinking, and being more very flexible and maybe more tolerant has enabled me to say we will be an organization that sets targets as far as diversity and inclusion is concerned, and not just for gender but also for age, right? And also one that commits to doing it sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really like that contribution of being deliberate with the gender percentages. Well done on that. So I'll go over to Ehime, and her question is basically, as part of Nigeria's growing indigenous upstream sector, how has your leadership journey been shaped by the responsibilities to balance commercial performance with representation and local content development? And how did your time at Shell shape that?
No, thanks, Good morning. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks again to SciPec for the opportunity. In fact, I was very glad when Iro was talking about the first female. Just so before I start about Renaissance, I have to go back into my 20-year Shell career. So just for context, I'm actually the first female GM development and subsurface ever in the life of Shell. So Shell has been in Nigeria for about 50 years. And this is not just a side GM job, this is a real core technical GM role. So I'm accountable for all the development, so everything that goes through the funnel. I'm accountable for long-term production, I'm accountable for reserves, I'm accountable for some real core technical work. So, but how did I get there? I think it's quite important. So Shell was quite deliberate, and honestly, I think I was very fortunate with Shell. Just to put it in summary, since I've been with Shell, I've had 3 international assignments. So I've had, so if you saw me up, I think I've spent about 7 years in the States, just getting the right exposure and the right development. Shell paid for my MBA, so Shell paid for me to go to Wharton, so not just any MBA, it's an Ivy League MBA, so fully paid about $200,000 by Shell. But also more importantly, and I think I like the point Iro was talking about engineers, Shell exposed me to field assignments. So I worked almost 15 years in deep water. Part of that was going on field assignments. But what is important was when we got, so very early on when I joined the company, which was about 20 years ago, we got identified as, okay, you guys are going to be talent, I'm going to deliberately prepare you. But what you don't realize is, as part of that identification, you have males and you have females, and you're exposed to the same things, right? But along the way, the challenges that the females face is quite unique and quite different. Case in point, I'll give you an example. There was a time, I was very deliberate about my field assignments because I realized as an engineer, you really can't be a fancy engineer behind the desk. But case in point, there are times where I had to be on the field, and they'll tell me that there is really no space for a female because if one woman occupies the room, that automatically means four bed space is gone. So being able to create and escalate and create opportunities where you don't miss out, because what you find is when they identify all of you, if the women face challenges along the way, they get stalled, right? While the men continue, right? They go to the field, there's no limitation on accommodation. So having the company who creates the framework that enables the women to succeed is very important. You have to think about it, along the way I had 2 kids, so my son is 12, my daughter is 10. So you can imagine, along the way I had to take out time for maternity leave, and I still remember I got promoted to a team lead even when I was pregnant for my son. So having a company who doesn't say you're pregnant and you're not going to be around for 3 months, I know I brought up my laptop when I was in the hospital anyway, but that aside, I think creating that framework to say we're not going to discriminate against you because you're pregnant. So of course, having that support is very important because otherwise the journey could have been quite different. So thanks to having a company like Shell, of course, you have your first female general manager in development and subsurface. But why is that important? So right now, I inherited a group of 150 staff. That's quite a lot, right? So now we staff of 150, but no longer with Shell, now with Renaissance. And not only do I have 150 staff, we're trying to double production. So Renaissance currently produces about 250 to 60,000 barrels. And by 2030, we want to produce 500. Tying very strongly with the federal government's goal and aspiration of getting to 3 million. Now, to do that, and I like the question you asked, there's a question of you want to drive target and you want to drive production. But you have to remember my journey, right? Someone supported me through my journey for me to get to where I am. So very important for me is how do I now support the ladies in that group of 150 that when I leave, it doesn't become a gap. We then have way more women who hold GM and VP positions. But to do that, you have to be quite deliberate because of course you have to double production. So there's a target you have to meet, but at the same time you have to create the support and the environment. But why that is also easier for me being a woman is I have been through the journey. So I don't have to read a book, I don't have to learn. It's my experiences. I know what I went through when I had to get my field assignments. Someone mentioned about harassment. I know what I got exposed to being in a male-dominated environment. So it's not going to be me learning through books. It's me leading change and driving change through my experiences. And I think that's very very powerful. And kudos to my company, Shell's Renaissance. We have 2 women currently who sit on the Leadership and Leadership Plus. One of the ladies is a VP project. So, it's not a case of ladies being, no offense to HR or all the softer side functional. The 2 ladies are holding quite important technical role. So the VP projects and engineering drives our projects, and I drive our sub-survey. So very important. And I think we need to continue to support and encourage women to hold those roles, because that's the only way we can really pull others through, while of course keeping our eyes on the goals and the targets, right? And the last one I want to raise is, no one ever gave me any free lunch, right? I'm understanding, and the only reason I keep saying I can hold this role because I didn't get free lunches. So again, understanding that you didn't get free lunches, and you're not going to give a woman a slot because it's a woman, and you understand the importance of the role to drive the delivery and the numbers that you want to achieve, I think that it's just so much easier. Like for me, it's like, I don't even understand why we're not going to do more of this, because when women have experienced it, it's easy, it's your experience. And I think if someone comes to ask you, how does it feel to give birth, right? So you're not going to read a book, you're just going to talk about it, right? So we need to encourage more female leadership, because really it drives the difference in how you achieve your targets. So thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and thank you so much, Rochelle, for the investment in diversity. So let's move on to the next participant, panelist, Damiola Owolabi, who is in LPG gas. As an LPG player, run us through your leadership journey in building Selai Gas, and how have you navigated barriers?
Thank you very much. And one, thank you to Cyber for this great opportunity to be here. It's my delight to be here as an LPG player, so it's been upstream conversations, marine and upstream from the beginning. So coming down to the upstream, to the LPG part, which is, so I'm going to keep it very real as much as possible. So for us at Selai Gas is a gas trading company. We run an LPG plant located in one of the suburbs of Lagos called Agege, and we've been in the business for well over 3 years now. So I'm sitting here as the managing director of Selai Gas, but particularly starting off Selai Gas hasn't been a very fancy journey. It's been a journey of resilience, determination, and hard work. I remember when we started, it was at the peak of COVID, so we needed all the support that we could get in terms of funding, which we didn't access that, but it was quite interesting to see how the growth trajectory from where we started to where we are currently. And the major barriers that we faced at the beginning of our business was funding and also infrastructure, because we're in an area where the Lagos State government had asked for any gas plant to be set up there. So somewhere in Agege where there are lots of explosions that have occurred, gas plant explosions that have occurred there. So what that meant was that seeking Lagos State government approval meant you had to show over and above that safety requirements were in place beyond what was demanded. And eventually we got our approval to be able to set up at that location after 6 months of waiting. But one key thing, why the interest in that particular location was because as an NYC back in the day, as a youth corps member back in the day, I used to live around that neighborhood, and seeing the way people struggle to access gas, cooking gas, was quite difficult. So at the time where I was going to pivot from what I was currently doing into the LPG space, I knew that Agege area was a place at the top of my heart because of my experience within that area. So prior to Selai Gas being set up, there was no gas plants there. So what that meant was that access to clean cooking fuels, to cooking gas was quite a big deal. So setting up there with regulatory compliance, it was quite tough because we needed to meet
all the requirements over and above again because that area wasn't approved. So I recall that day at the Lagos State office where the commissioner told me that it's only the governor that can grant you that approval, and I told him, I said, then I'll get it. And the truth is we eventually got that approval through very difficult, rigorous process. And I'm saying this out of so much passion because it was so difficult to get funding also because we had built the plant and we needed working capital to have our first gas in the tank. I recall having a conversation with the bank and they said, look, we've not seen you, there's no track record, we can't give you any money. But thankfully, we were able to raise funds for that. How did we raise the funding? It was through people that believed in our business, that believed in our vision, right? And they were able to pull resources together. So one thing that stood out for me in building Stellar Gas is the integrity and credibility, because in the gas space, you need to, credibility, integrity is a currency, right? Because you need to show, for lack of a better word, show workings. You need to show to people that, look, even the depot owners, I recall reaching out to one of the top depot owners then to say, look, we wanted that engagement such that you're able to deliver gas to us, and as we sell, we pay to you. And they were like, what's your track record? How many plants do you have? And I said, look, we just have one. So it took a lot of boldness to get into those strategic partnerships. And today I'm very thankful for the support that I've gotten from various associations, Women in Energy Network. Thank you, Ms. Aona. She was quite helpful and instrumental to the growth of our business. And looking back in the last 3 years where we are now, because you can't just sit at one location, you need to scale your business. So we're currently scaling to other parts of Lagos. And we're also working with more women in the communities, more so helping them to transit from the dirty fuels, the traditional fuels of coal pots or firewood into cooking gas. And to do this, the funding was also very important. So what we did was to ensure that cylinder accessibility was available for them. So we got our license from SOM to be able to produce cylinders locally such that we're able to distribute to these women. And currently, if you're within the EveafriqueNews community of Lagos, you would see Stellar Gas branded cylinders. These cylinders were locally manufactured in Nigeria and we're spreading it across all those communities, making sure it's affordable and they have access to it. So for me, the leadership barrier has been quite enormous, but determination, hard work, and strategic partnership has helped us grow and thrive, and we're still thriving regardless. Thank you very much.
Fantastic story. I remember visiting her maiden plant when she was just starting up, so well done, Damilola. And I also see you're moving to Akomojo as well. Fantastic. So I'll move on to our next panelist. Welcome, Bassi. Your question is, Lloyds operates in a highly results-driven, traditionally male-dominated segment of the industry. From your leadership journey, what lessons have you learned about navigating systemic barriers while still building high-performance, inclusive teams that deliver measurable results?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laura, for that. I'm going to share this very personally, but I think you can relate because we operate in a similar industry. So Lloyds is a marine logistics, security and support company. And what we do is we provide critical maritime assets in support of operations. And you can best imagine that when we started, it was not an easy feat. It's a highly male-dominated space with a lot of big players. And what was important to us at the time was performance is not something that is negotiable. You know, there are high performance in the space, so it was important to us to prioritize competence, capability, capacity, and compliance. It was a very big deal. I think when we first started, it was all about systems process. That's how we basically started building. And most importantly, people want to know, okay, who are you? What do you do? Why do we work? Why do we need to work with you in the first place? And that goes to show that, you know, there is a perception in the industry, whether you like it or not, especially when you're now a woman-led or woman-owned business. There's even more of a perception. So what was very important to us is to say, you know what, we're here and we can support your operations. And today we have successfully supported 3 operators to get to first work. Not only have we just supported them by providing critical assets, we also supported them with, you know, there's one thing to provide an asset, but there's another thing to provide an asset on credit. And we did, and I think that's part of the NPR's ambition to achieve, you know, high growth, and that's what we've done. And another thing we've also achieved is also launch an international operation. So we just launched that this year and established our business internationally. So what am I saying? You know, that's competence, capacity is very, very, very important. Another thing is, you know, when we're, you know, I speak a lot at a lot of panels. I'm very passionate about, you know, local content, female entrepreneurship, inclusion, etc. And one thing I always people say is, you know, we treat it like we've all recorded like it's a social conversation, and it's not a social conversation. I like when Iro was sharing, you know, the achievements of stars and what she's been able to do by being deliberate and intentional. And it goes a lot to show how, you know, policy design should be deliberate. Because when we wanted to, you know, create and promote indigenous capacity, we were intentional about the policies that are being created. So when we're building policies, do we think about the sustainability of that policy? Because if those policy designs don't allow for, you know, emerging companies to also scale, then we're going to die. You're going to kill us. Sorry, I'm being practical, but this is the truth, because, you know, we end up speaking a lot about, you know, intention. But it doesn't just stop at intention. It starts with what are we doing to change it. And so I want to challenge everyone. You know, I wasn't very happy when I came and the front row seats were a bit empty. I think we need to have more people hear this conversation. It's not a favor. It's not a token. I didn't get here, or you know, I like when the message didn't get here by having a free lunch or being handed, you know, a token. No, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work, and I believe the, you know, industry needs to also respect that and also create intentional policies to support us as well. So one of the things I wanted to share was in fighting systematic barriers. It wasn't an emotional decision or an emotional thing, and that's why I'm very intentional about even the words I'm using here. Intentional systematic barriers exist, whether we like it or not. And that's why, you know, as part of the Women in Energy Board, I sit on the board, and we've structured a very strategic partnership with KPMG. And what we want to do is be able to bring out the facts. Let's bring out the facts. You know, when facts are there, facts don't lie, they speak. It's going to measure what are the performance metrics. How many women are in the pipeline? How many businesses are you supporting? How many female-owned businesses are in your pipeline? When we talk about projects, who are you awarding them to? We want to see the numbers. So maybe when we see these actual numbers, it will become evident that indeed work needs to be done. And that's what I want to end with. Thank you.
Fantastic. Funny enough, we went to the side room where we were having a chat, and this conversation around matrices, statistics, KPIs came up. And really, the supply chain managers in the operating companies, NCDMB, even Pattern, and looking at the fact that we're celebrating 10 years of SciTech, we can begin to look at the next 10 years. How will diversity, equity, and inclusion play out over the next 10 years? So I'm going to pass this on to Patricia, who has, I'm sure she has some voice notes or ideas to share with us. From your leadership journey, what barriers have you had to challenge in building credibility and inclusion in highly technical oil and gas environments? And how did you overcome them? Maybe you can give some ideas about what you think we should be doing going forward. Thanks.
Yeah, well, back to the issue of data. I think without data, you can't measure. You can't set targets. You can't measure. And I think we're missing that. We're still missing that in the sector. When I joined Aradel Board, I was the first woman to join the board. I'm always going to be the first. I was the first female-owned business to join Pattern as well. I was the first woman on Aradel Board. And since then, now we're 3, we've increased that. But even being on the board, wherever you find yourself, wherever you sit, you can start demanding data. And so I started demanding what the data was in terms of females that work in the company. We haven't gotten to supply diversity yet, but at least let's start with the number of females in the company. And because of that, the board set a target. a very ambitious target for our management, which is 40%, but we know because it's so high, they are striving, and the last recruitment they did, I mean, they were really pushing to put more women. So I think having the data is important, because when you see the data, it sort of jokes everybody. Say, oh, well, only 15%, only 10%, only 20% of women in the company, and then you suddenly wake up to reality and know that our DI targets are too low, the number of women working in the organization. So that's very, very important. But how do we do this and sustain it in the industry? I think creating more opportunities for women to be trained and exposed within the sector is important. I think building the pipeline, and I know WM is doing quite a bit in trying to ensure that we expand the pipeline, that we bring more women in, because if you don't get the women at the base, then how are you going to get them at the top? It's not going to happen. And so building that pipeline from the beginning is very, very important. We need to catch them young, catch them at university, make them understand that it's not just the field jobs, the other back office jobs that they can do, or engineering jobs. I'm not talking about admin jobs. They can also be involved in. They don't always have to be in the field, because getting women in the field has always been a challenge. I know I always recruited female engineers, tried to recruit, but trying to get them onto the field, especially when it's an offshore location, used to be impossible. It was a battle, it was a fight for women afterwards. I think you mentioned that it was always difficult. When it was a land location, I always made sure I sent them. But after a while, then they can work at the back end. But I think just creating that, because we do need women as well as men. So building that talent pipeline, catching them young, and making sure that with the new emerging technologies, a lot of data, AI, generative AI, there are other areas that are opening up where women can actually look at and can actually begin to build their capacities in and around, so that they're also very relevant in the sector. So it's not just the hard end. I know I can't, I do surface well testing, and I know there's some jobs women cannot do. They're hitting pipes and putting the pipes together. I don't see women doing that. But the other jobs they can do, which are more specialized and more technical, and I think we can continue to build that capacity pipeline. But we do, as a sector, really begin to take that data down and find out how many women, set these targets, have that baseline, and then monitor to see how we are actually moving ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I want to Iro. Looking at Nigeria's energy addition, we've decided we're not going for energy mix anymore. We're going to have energy addition to make the huge targets of energy poverty in Africa. What role do inclusive leadership and mentorship play in ensuring the next generation of energy entrepreneurs can scale and thrive?
Thank you. So I believe in representation. So just listening to all the women on the panel in different fields, within the industry, just it's so powerful, because I looked, I sort of kissed the room. I tried to ignore the front row, being empty. But I want to give kudos to people like Renaissance that are still seated here and listening to what's going on. I know I saw the MD or MD Western earlier, the first earlier panel. But I see that we have a lot of young people, both male and female, sitting here. So listening and seeing shows that it's possible, and I think that that's more powerful than a lot of motivational speaking, but just saying that it's possible, right? It's attainable. Yes, there are challenges, and it's probably going to take a lot to overcome those challenges, but it is achievable, as all the women sitting here. Please, can you just put your hands together? And then just a small representation of the number of women who actually have broken a lot of ceilings in their various companies, in their various sectors, to be really keen to representation. So I don't turn out, so as much as possible, I like to take advantage of platforms like this, and I encourage other women to step out and speak. As I said, there's power in telling your story, because when you tell your story and there's a young person who's sitting there and leaves the room to say, if she could do it, if she could overcome, then what excuse do I have? So taking advantage of every opportunity to tell your story as authentically as you can, I think is critical. And I want to just do a small call to action. I always just believe, yes, I like to speak truth to power. If you follow my trajectory in the industry, panels and sessions, they're always usually very controversial. I think this is the calmest panel session I've I like to say it starts where you are. So every one of us sitting here, especially for those of us who work at own companies, we have a circle of sphere of influence, either within our organization or in associations that we are part of. And I want to say that you have to be intentional. It's easy to sort of point the finger and say NCDM needs to be doing that, the federal government needs to be doing this, etc. We just heard about Shell. Shell is an organization that it needs to make money. They're a profit-generating organization. Why would they elect? She's just one person, $200,000, right? And a female employee that's going to give them some downtime along the way. What if she wanted to have 5 kids, right? That's how many months of maternity? Well, they said we don't care. We identify that you bring value to the organization, and we're going to return that favor by investing in you. And that's just one person. I want to imagine how many such scholars that have that kind of opportunity to sponsor. So I'm saying, so even at my level, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, what am I doing as a leader who has had the experience, who understands what needs to be done? How am I adding my own quota in my own little organization? Yes, you might not be having 1,000 employees, but at least I have about 200 employees. What is the percentage? Do I have metrics? Do I have an intentional framework that encourages that pipeline for women to come? So I want to call out to everyone who's sitting here, if you're a woman, you're a man, and when you leave this room and you go back, whilst we wait for the bigger, policy changes that force you, I just feel like, just look at it like a civic duty, right? Like, it just makes economic sense. Look at all this women. If I tell you what we're contributing to the GDP of just the world, it's not just in Nigeria, I tell you that it makes economic sense for you to have, because just, have some women leaders around you. So if you go back, just sort of go back and ask your HR manager and start looking at those numbers, right? And start to design your own policies and your own frameworks within your control to see how do I bring more young people in. I'm looking at my age, now we're tracking age, right? I get accused at the board. Like, oh, you're too gender sensitive, or your CSR, when you look at our impact report, you're supporting this thing for women, you gave money to this event that was for women, this is what else, and so even this year I'm having to now strike up a balance. And I'm tracking that balance by increasing the money, right? I'm not going to go down. Okay, fine, so we pay more, so we can do general and then we'll do our women focus program. So I'm just saying that every one of us has something that we bring tangibly to this conversation. That's how we move the needle. And kudos to you, Basi, for what BN is doing in terms of getting the data. Because I was just saying that the fact that we need to not wait for NCMB. It's something that an NCMB maybe we hope they do, but they're not doing it. So why don't we just do it, right? If we're able to just get it done and begin to tell our own story, because no one's going to come and save us. Let's start to save ourselves, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thanks for challenging different bodies, and I'm sure that we'll move the needle forward a bit. So I'm going to go back to Ehime. What does mentorship look like in today's upstream oil and gas space, and how can new companies like Renaissance Africa Energy better equip the next generation of Nigerian energy leaders for a rapidly changing global landscape?
Yeah, no, thanks. And thanks. When I saw that question, I was very happy because I think when they ask you what keeps you awake at night, I think one of my biggest challenge is having gone through 21 years of my exposure as an engineer to the industry, how do I give that back? Right? I talked about having 150 staff, but if you look at it broadly, I'm actually Renaissance has about 1,600 staff, right? So my impact is way beyond my direct function. It's how do I impact more broadly? Well, maybe a few things. I think, and then maybe another point is I got trained in the platform of Shell. And Shell is a big company. Shell is a rich global company with global exposure. Renaissance is a little bit different, right? So we inherited Shell asset, but we don't have that global structure. Right, for a case in point, Shell sent me 3 times abroad just to work for a Shell affiliate. That doesn't exist, right? So it presents a different set of challenge to us in terms of how do we sufficiently expose and train the next generation. But I think it's a unique challenge. Case in point is, if I want to make a decision, I don't have to go to group, right? My MD is a phone call away, so I call Tony and ask, and it's easily done. So there's that benefit. But I think the point I'm trying to make is the rules of mentorship and coaching, I don't think it changes, right? For me, mentorship is in three aspects. It's about exposure, empowerment, and trust. So if you look back, sufficiently expose and train the person, you empower the person, have been empowered to deliver to double production by 2030, and then you trust the person to deliver that, right? So I don't get calls every day to ask, okay, how much are you developing today? So if you go back to the exposure, that's the key part about mentorship, right? And for me, the message I try to preach is, I don't think there's a different set of requirements for women when it comes to that exposure. If I look back on my career, right, I spent years offshore, I spent years in the field. I think the requirement to be successful when you get empowered is the same. I think and there's one message I want to leave, because I believe there's quite a young crowd here. I think don't ever expect to be exposed in a different way than your male counterpart, right? The requirement for the job, I took over this job from a male, I don't think they would automatically say, because it's a woman, the requirement for the job is different. So if you think about it, right, so if you put it in context, the CEOs, I looked at the number of CEOs in oil operating companies. I think we had Ella before and Ella left, and then there was none. There was no female when you talk about an upstream operating company in Nigeria, female MD, female CEO. Recently, we just had Elo who came in for Midwestern. So if you think about it, I don't think Elo's job as CEO of the company is any different from any CEO. So once you remember that, then you have to go through your own journey of coaching, quite unique and same as a female. Now, where does the difference come in, right? The difference comes in, so Patricia talked about, you require field exposure. But what kind of field exposure do you need to get as a woman compared to a man? So a few things that we give, for example, for Renaissance, right, we have land location. So the woman can go in the morning and come back in the evening. That provision is there compared to the men who probably go to the swamp and spend a couple of nights. So for example, if you're someone who has a little child and you can't go to the field, the shortcut is I don't want field exposure. That's not it. The question is, I need to get my field exposure, but how will my own journey be different, right? If you need to take time out to have a child, or for example, we had a leadership meeting yesterday, and one of the female leaders said, sorry, I have to leave at 3:30 because I have to go pick up my daughter. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have to do the tasks that she's doing in the meeting. The difference was we have to put her task forward, so she finishes her part, and it gives her time to leave at 3:30. So I think the real message is really not about shortcuts or doing things differently, because the job description doesn't change. Now, what I want to say is that I do recognize that the younger generation are faced with a different set of challenge, right? It's digital, it's AI, they are exposed to a different set of challenge. So for us in Renaissance, we're really looking at how do we mentor from a female-male diversity perspective, but how do you also mentor from an age perspective, right? I don't know if there's anyone younger than 40 on this panel, or maybe Basil like you. But both of you. But anyway, I'm in my mid-40s, and to me, I need to think about how do I train not only the 150, but also expose the 1,005 who are way much younger than I, who are way more intelligent than I am, way more advanced than I am in technology. So there's also that challenge, how do you expose them? The last point I want to make, I'm bringing it back to Renaissance, is Renaissance as an as an NOC who inherited an IOC has such a unique opportunity. So we have the structures, platform, and systems inherited from Shell. We have the Shell staff who have been trained by Shell. So it already exists, and how do we give back? And I think the uniqueness of being an NOC is that we are fully connected with a lot of our board members also have companies where we can expose our staff to, right? So there's just such a unique opportunity, but you just have to recognize how does diversity play, not only from a gender perspective, but also from an age perspective. And I think we'll win at the end of the day, and Nigeria will get to 3 million barrels by 2030. I believe, I'm convinced, and I know Renaissance will double that in the next 4 years.
Fantastic response, Onyinye. And over the past 2 days, we've been looking at integrated solutions we've been looking at collaboration, and the fact that certain resources exist in certain locations and in certain groups, and how do we tie these groups together to have a holistic and integrated solution, mentoring, coaching. I like the idea of some of your board members or owners of other marginal field or independent companies. And then you also have groups in the service providing companies. And I think really a holistic human capital development roadmap is necessary for us to be able to provide the talent to achieve $3 million of money. All these companies are scaling. So thank you so much for that very valid point. I'll go to my next speaker, Damilola. Would you like to share with us in terms of how gas positioned as a transition fuel for Africa within your space? How can leaders intentionally mentor and position the next generation, especially women, and build the gas networks for delivery of LPG and actually penetrating the grassroots? And how can we get young talent and engineers involved in Nigeria's gas grid in the future?
All right, thank you very much. The truth is that if we want to see gas as a transition fuel in Africa, we need to be very intentional about it. Nothing will happen without us moving. We need to mentor people. While mentorship is good, I am a very strong advocate for advocacy, because mentorship is more or less to me like advice. Advice is cheap, right? Advocacy is what changes people's career. Because for me, I experienced a lot of advocacy building my business. So I came into the oil and gas space as an entrepreneur. I'm not an engineer, nothing. I have none of these ideas that anywhere as and all. So what for me was just the drive, the passion, and there were lots of big sisters and even big brothers that helped him and holding me through the process. So advocacy is what was the major change for me. So it is important that we see more of that within the energy space. Also, let's normalize women being in core operations within the oil and gas space. No disrespect to HR and admin, but enough of just keeping women within the HR and admin space. Women should be able to do core operations, like being an engineer, you should encourage women to be able to take on those responsibilities, and also ensure that there's adequate infrastructure in place for them. I think Hero mentioned PPEs, right? If not for what she did for that female engineer, ensuring that all that she needed to be successful in her role was made available to her, she wouldn't be where she is today. So, and that's a strong way of advocating for that lady's success, ensuring that she's successful in what she's doing. I would also like to speak to the younger ones in the room to say, build the interest. Interest is also very important. You need to have that. There has to be that keen interest in you. For me, again, I said I was never an engineer. When I wanted to set up Stellar Gas, I went for internship at the gas plant for 6 months. I needed to understand how to discharge gas from the truck. I needed to understand how to dispense into cylinders. When it was time, when I got the interest into building manufacturing cylinders, I went to a manufacturing plant to understand how they manufacture their cylinders, how the valves fit into the bottles. I needed to do all of that. So that interest needs to be there. No one is going to hand it over to you. The truth is, no one is coming to save anyone, right? It is very important that you deliberately, intentionally stand up for yourself, show up for yourself, and I'm sure that there are more than enough women and men as well within the space that would handhold you through the process. So having that keen interest is also very important, because that is one of the major things that has helped us to grow and also help us to identify people that were ready and willing to advocate for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Damilola. I like the fact that you talked about sponsorship and basically people, you mentioned advocacy, but also sponsorship. And you also mentioned internship. At this point, I'd like to commend Shell Renaissance. The Shell Renaissance Group is partnered with NCDMB and PETAN on a 24-month graduate internship program. Where they sponsor 100 graduates to work in PETA member companies, fully funded. And this is the kind of integrated collaboration we'd like to see more of, intentionally building capacity from the grassroots and encouraging our young professionals to be part of the industry in a strategic manner. So can we give Renaissance a round of applause for taking that up from Sean? So I'll just move on to Basi. And I mean, I honestly would like to hear from you because I know this is your passion as well. Many organizations talk about diversity and inclusion, but implementation often lags behind intention. From your experience, what practical steps should Nigerian oil and gas companies take to move beyond conversations and create real, structured pathways for young professionals, especially women, into leadership, technical roles, and create sustainable business opportunities for female entrepreneurs?
Okay, I'll try and keep it very brief. Like I said earlier, the biggest mistake that we all make is sitting down, listening to us, going out and continuing as normal. It's not a social conversation. As a nation, we cannot even achieve the energy security that we desire if half of our population is underutilized. So I want us to go back with this question and start asking ourselves very critical questions, first as an individual, and then as corporates, what exactly are we doing and what can we do better? So for me, the first steps, I like to just give very straightforward practical steps. Listening to everyone here is very, evident what, mentorship, internship, sponsorship has, has proven, right? And the first thing is, let's look at it from the grassroots. I want to pick up from what Madam Patricia said. Let's build more intentional and structured entry pipeline systems. Entry internship program, not just as just another internship side, but more structured. Another thing is looking at HR. Let's change HR from just measuring what people are doing, but how are they also impacting other people? Can we start measuring how our leaders are sponsoring or mentoring other people? Because if we don't focus on building a sustainable pipeline, it will collapse. And Hima is talking about how she's looking at the next generation behind her. Hero is here because there was a next generation that handed it over to her. So how are we intentional about building that pipeline to ensure that it's sustainable? And for women in business, which is one thing I'm really passionate about, is, we need more intentionality, access to finance. I wish I saw his MD here, he walked out, but I was, something we've been pushing for is to say, let's, increase the fund, let's have more access. But most importantly, I want to start by saying, I've heard a lot about Renaissance, and I love it. But I want to push something back. Seplat is actually leading a front for women in business. They have actually created a model that works. So what I want to push back to you is, why don't you guys go back and look at what Seplat has done and see if you can also implement it. It is working. The issue is that women in business is not about competence or capacity. It's the ability to scale. I just want to be honest with you. Last year we lost a multi-million-dollar contract because we're in a disadvantaged position. This year we want to scale. So what are you doing to ensure that that scale happens? That's on your own end. So I just want to charge that back. I know Renaissance in the room. I want to charge you back to go back and think about, not so that when we come back next year, we'll be hearing more deliberate actions that are taken. And we don't have to sit on this panel and talk about the same things year in, year out. We want to see actual results and measurable change. Thank you.
So, thank you so much, Basi, for that contribution. And I think we should just challenge all the IOCs and independents and marginal stakeholders to let it all come together. I think we have IPPG, just like we have OPTS. We can also have NCDM thinking through the next steps to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I have some questions which, if we have people in the audience who want to chime in, or if we will leave a passing comments. What concrete actions must Nigeria and Africa take to translate local content policy reform into measurable DEI impact, Do we have the data on supplier diversity, whether it's in IOCs, independence, NCDMB? How do we move from commitment to diversity and inclusion in local execution? And what deliberate steps will industry, government, and regulators in terms of matrices and KPIs take to advance women into leadership roles across Nigeria's oil and gas industry, as well as tangible entrepreneurship contributions? Thank you very much. Hold on, please. I want to find out from Richmond, do we have time to take questions from the audience, or do we just have 5 more minutes? So, okay then. Okay then, so I think we can take just 2 questions from the audience, and then we close with a 1-minute response from the panelists. We have 2 hands up, so thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayomide Kawa, recent graduate from Lagos State University. So my question is actually directed to Engineer Euro. I don't really like this one. Okay. So, really want to talk about diversity, not in terms of gender or any other aspect, but in terms of talent and expertise, right? So we have young talent that are capable of using this current technology like AI, ML, all of that. And we have expertise who understand the energy industry very well, right? So as ML and AI is increasing, we have increasing, we will be intense amounts for energy, right? The world needs more energy for all of these data centers to store all this data, right? So how is the energy industry trying to bridge this gap between young people that have these latest skills, technology, and industrial experts that have vast experience in energy? Yes, they understand energy, but yes, that gap between them.
They get the question. How to build a bridge between the expertise that will help drive the data centers that need energy, correct? That's what you're saying. 10 seconds.
Don't worry.
Thank you. My name is Chidi Maobi. I'm the founder of my little company called Eagle Energy Services and Resources Limited. I also currently sit on the board of the mini LNG development that is evolving. I'm the only woman on the board, and I can tell you, I see all the fights. But I fight 10 fights more than the men, so I'm not going anywhere. Part of the question I wanted to take from what you have reached out is what deliberate steps are to be taken for women to be incorporated in the business. Ibilola and I have come a long way, and I'm going to tell this story to say that the women on the board of companies can actually activate the participation of women in IOCs, in NOCs, by just giving them a leverage step. I forgot to say that part of my background was that I was a transactional lawyer with Shell. And so when I decided to leave law, after I took an early retirement, I said I wasn't going to go into law. I was going to be a contractor, right? And an entrepreneur. It's been a tough journey, but it's a journey I love that I took because I took it when I was young, and I could face all the no's. And we happened to have joined WeConnect, and there was a lady in procurement in ExxonMobil who deliberately went out of her way to ensure that women were able to participate in the bids. And what did she do? What she did was that she went up to management and said, let us give these women an opportunity to bid in some certain places and have the EPC companies incorporate them as, minor contractors. And she fought that fight. Unfortunately, we lost her. So I don't have a question. Mine is a contribution. What do you do, Renaissance? What do you do, Ms. Hart? You already know what to do. What do you do with secular perception base? There's still so much room for improvement. And so go back in your individual companies and think about how to build up capacity for women. And they said, oh, the journey, I hear in the room, the journey is not for the really-hearted. And I can tell you that the women do not go to meet by 12 o'clock in the night to discuss how they will get contracts. Where do you do it? If it's in hair salons, please connect. If it's after church, please connect. If it is in your OPN group and your group that you're doing, please connect. Build the capacity. We already have enough women on the bench and we can do it.
But I have only one question for Iro, and that's the comment I take. Iro, you have 30 seconds. Can you build a bridge or build it later in the next session? So 30 seconds is all you have. My iPad.
Still bullying us.
Iro, from you.
Exactly.
Iro, from you.
I'm going to transition you.
Iro, from you. Please go ahead.
So I think very valid question. And the truth is that one of the things happen when we get everybody into a room, right? We're having this very vibrant conversation. People are living with a transformed mindset because you got all of us from different perspectives into a room. I'll just say that NCDMB used to, and I don't know if they still do, I haven't heard about any of these events in recent times. They used to do what they call the R&D fair, Research and Development Fair. It was such a fantastic platform to really doing it this year, 2020. So it's a very good platform to bring the academia, bring tech, and now tech is obviously gaining momentum, and then bring the energy companies into one room where different innovative ideas are being presented, and there are even competitions, what they call megathons or something like that, hackathons, yes, and people take it and different organizations win prizes. So I think that we need to continue to have that collaborative conversation. And truly, the energy industry cannot ignore the advance of technology and the role that it plays. And I think Amy also spoke to that. Even us in shipping, when we look at some of the environmental targets that are set for us in terms of emissions, it is only technology that will help us to achieve in a very sustainable and efficient manner, right? Not us trying to do it manually or with old ways of doing things. So I think that's a good idea. Maybe look out for that. NCDMB R&D events that are coming up, see if you can attend and participate. And it's a very, I think Abdul Malik used to lead it and he still is there, so something is very dear and dear to his heart. But we should take on this conversation and Richmond will allow, maybe bring it up at the next panel or Richmond so that it continues to go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kuro. I'd like to leave a few words with the fact that quite a lot has come out that I think the Diversity Sectoral Working Group of the Nigerian Content Consultative Forum of the NCDMB has to take on board. And I think we need to connect with NCDMB on some KPIs, matrices, and data sets that they need to look into deeply. That ties into NCD managers in the various organizations, as well as the supply chain managers as well. There's a lot we can do in that case. Richmond, do I have enough time to ask my ladies to give us a parting 1-minute pitch? Thank you so much.
All of you on this panel are like family to me, and I don't want us to have a family meeting after now where we're resolving crisis. So please take your parting shots.
Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to say, we've talked about internship programs and what the amazing things Renaissance are doing. I think all the other companies need to do a bit of that as well, so have more internship programs, because practical experience, field experience is most important. As we build the capacity, over the years. I've been in the industry for 27 years, and I can tell you, most of the capacity I built, they're in the Middle East. They've all left. They've left the country. as you build, they're leaving. So we still need to build more capacity. So that field experience is important. So beyond just the internship programs, we need a collaboration between the operators, between the service companies, and to ensure that for the jobs going on, for the field jobs going on, we make allowance for training on the field. It's not there. You have to really try and struggle to get your interns on the field. They need that field experience. And I can tell you, once they have field experience, which they need, the sky's the limit for them. So we really do need that collaboration to build the capacity that is required going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So my parting shot would be still standing on my call to action. And every single person sitting in this room, you see my big brother, that is sitting right there, trying to call you out, or just saying that let all of us, including myself, go back and do that self-appraisal for our organization. Where are we like classes? What more can we do? And how do we set those targets and track? Intention. It is whatever you pay attention to, is what you feed, what you nurture, that's what grows. So just leaving that with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hero.
No, thanks. I think very much thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I strongly believe that my story inspires, so I hope it's at least inspired the younger ones after me. I of course am looking up to the older ones to continue to inspire. I'll just say, sort of leave the three things. I think one of the first things I've said was there are no shortcuts. And we have to always remember that there are no shortcuts, whether you're a woman or a man. The second thing, indeed, I strongly agree, and thanks for the opportunity for being on this panel.